for coming. We're really proud here at the library to be part of the first Door County History Days. And today we're going to have a program on the granary and the progress that's being made to having it as a real history site in Sturgeon Bay. Tim Stone is here to tell us something about the whole project. Tim?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for coming. And you may wonder, why would I be interested in the granary? And I've got three really strong reasons. The first is my great-grandfather had a small fleet of schooners out of Milwaukee in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And while I can't prove it yet, it wouldn't surprise me if I found out that one of his schooners came up to the granary to get a load of grain hauled out. Second reason is I spent time on a dairy farm south of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin in the late 1940s, 1950s, and really enjoyed it and have great respect for farmers and what they do and the land they do it on. And the third thing is, in 1959 to 62, we were stationed at Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota, which is on the far east end of North Dakota, and in the Civil Engineering Office. And from time to time, I hop on the Empire Builder and head across the top of the United States in the railroad to Havre, Montana. Then I get on another train to go down to Great Falls, Montana, where there's Maelstrom Air Force Base. So, but along that route were many of these grain elevators scattered along the way, and you'll see in the video clip. I also saw a lot of them in Saskatchewan, and the pool elevators. We got a couple of video clips on that. So anyway, that's why I'm deeply interested in the granary and want its success. This is the last one that's left. There were at least 3 in Sturgeon Bay area, and this is the last one left. And so we'll move on to next slide. And here, this is in the 1940s, and this is a family harvesting hay, complete with a horse, and then they'd haul it to a hay mow where they lift it up and put it into the hay mow. And dear friend George Evenson, who was a tremendous man, a retired farmer, Door County was built on agriculture. And before that happened, the whole peninsula was timbered off. There were piers and sawmills all the way along either side of the peninsula. And I have a feeling a lot of that timber ended up down in Chicago to rebuild after the Chicago fire. And then over here on the right, you see some women culling out peas at a pea canning factory. And at one time, Door County was known as the pea producing capital of North America, which just kind of blows me away. Because we were doing it pea canning down in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, too. Let's not mess with that.
For millennia, granaries have been at the heart of human communities, protecting precious food resources and creating a strong bond between our human settlements and the surrounding landscape. Purely functional structures without decoration and built to carry massive loads and protect food from decay, they nonetheless elicit a sense of awe and humble, honest beauty. At the dawn of the 20th century in the American Midwest, granaries were built of readily available wood from old-growth forests and integrated the latest mechanical technology, resulting in the iconic small house on top of a big house that once proliferated across this rich agricultural landscape. Built for purely practical purposes, the Teweles and Brandeis granary nonetheless had a majestic profile, a complex and extraordinary interior shrouded in a historic silhouette standing over 75 feet tall.
The narrator there is James Dahlman, who was hired by the Sturgeon Bay Historical Society Foundation to be the architect for the renovation. These granaries are ancient, and it was really invented in Buffalo, New York, and they really were ubiquitous across America and certainly could have had a part in making the breadbasket, the United States breadbasket of the world. But they really only were used primarily in the 1800s and 1900s and were called the cathedrals of the prairie. And typically, at least up here, they would be 7 miles apart. the time it took for a farmer with his horse-drawn wagon with grain to go to the granary and then get back home in one day. So they're typically about 7 miles apart. Again, breadbasket of the world. There we go. Grain elevator. Fellow named Bill Cronin, wonderful man who's was a professor at UW-Madison, and you can read that. The most important, least acknowledged invention in the history of American agriculture. And then Bill Brown goes on to say, history of America itself, given the central role that agriculture played in transforming the USA into a superpower. And this other slide is out of the newspaper, and you can see seeds and seed grain. And so this grain elevator at one time would have had clover, timothy, grass seeds, millet, used that for duck hunting, mustard seed, flax, and a whole bunch of things that were in that granary at one time. A bit of history of what happened here. Moses Teweles was born in Prague, immigrated in 1855, came to Milwaukee, and then worked his way up the Lake Michigan to Sturgeon Bay. And Moses' son came, and the daughter, and then Isidore Brandeis was born in Prague in 1860. He came in 1877, and he married Moses' daughter Fanny, and they began a partnership in 1893 that lasted until 1938. As you can see here, this was a big event when the ship canal was opened up. And that was 1892 or 1882, pardon me. And that saved 100 miles. Instead of going up through Death's Door, they could go right through the ship canal. And we've seen some photographs where, like a little tug, would pull a schooner across from Lake Michigan. And I don't know what the fee was, but it was enough so that the schooner people got smart enough that they would tie one schooner behind another schooner behind another schooner to minimize the fee they had to pay to get into Sturgeon Bay. Okay, Anape Western Railroad came to Sturgeon Bay in 1894, and some of us are old enough to remember what locomotives looked like at that day. The other thing that kind of surprised me greatly was that Door County was the last county in the state to get a railroad and the first county to lose it. That just kind of blows me away. But anyway, you see the Anape rail line. You can see where it came from Green Bay, went over to the lakeshore, and then on up to Sturgeon Bay. On this photo, here you get an idea of where things were in those days. And there's a granary over here, and Teweles and Brandeis granary is right here at the end of a pier. And notice the spur line came over to their granary, and then there's another granary here, which was the Lyons Brothers, and that's now Sonny's Pizza. And this is before the Michigan Bridge was in and
Sir, can you point it at the screen?
Pardon me. Don't.
Yeah, easy thing to confuse.
Anyway, the railroad bridge here, Michigan Street Bridge went there in Oregon, but they weren't here at that point in time. And Teweles granary there in Brandeis, and then Lyons was over here, and as I said, where Sonny's Pizza is. And Teweles and Brandeis are pretty smart. It was at the end of the dock, and the spur went right into their granary. Here you see the granary in question that we're talking about now, Teweles and Brandeis. Here's a schooner at the dock, two more out here, and this is a warehouse that this Teweles and Brandeis owned, and it burned in 1944. Another view, here you see a farm wagon with grain, horses brought up. This was to the Lyon Brothers granary, and that one burned in 1960. Again, a view Teweles and Brandeis, Lion Brothers. You can see the rail bridge here. Again, Sonny's Pizza is there now. And there's also an article in the paper that, and you can read it there, but it says, besides the business streets in Sturgeon Bay, if you want to find out what really is going on, go to the granary, because the farmers are coming in, multiple farmers are coming every day, and I'm sure they have the local gossip. And that was from '02. Another view of it now. Before the rail bridge went in, a ferry boat would take people from one side of the Sturgeon Bay Ship Canal to the other. Again, you see their granary at the end of the dock, Lion Brothers. And once that bridge was built, then eventually cars could pay a fee and go back and forth, single file. And now you see it, and eventually the Michigan Street Bridge was dedicated in 1931. And what's interesting to me about that, it wasn't too long ago that there was talk here in Sturgeon Bay of taking down the Michigan Street Bridge. And now it's an iconic part of the advertising that we do for Door County or Sturgeon Bay. And there's the Steel Street Bridge Festival that they have. But anyway, you get a sense of what it was then. And now let's talk a little bit about how the granary really works. And you can see the rail car there, farm wagon comes in and dump their grain into a boot. And you see the supporting pillars, grain chutes above in the head house and the grain is brought in, and then by bucket and belt conveyor, it goes up to the top and then distributed to different bins. And the workhouse part is down below, belt and bucket, and there's a man lift. A single man can pull, it's counterweighted, can pull itself up to the top to be sure the grain chutes are going into the right bins. And there were, those were up 70 feet, and there are 19 bins, and all still in pretty good shape. The bins are about 30 feet tall, and when it was loaded, there were 30,000 bushels of grain in the grain elevator. 19 bins. Now, the granary sits on a filled lake bed, and the pilings at that time were made of wood. Well, that isn't going to hold too long, so 51 new steel pilings have been put in and driven down 50 feet to bedrock, and now a foundation's been poured over that, and there are 30 beams that used to hold up the first floor, and they're being restored and they're coming back to Sturgeon Bay. And I have another clip here. This happens to be from Canada Film Board, and it shows operation of the pool grain elevator up in Saskatchewan.
Not too bad. Well, are you going to weigh this thing right today, John?
I always do, don't I?
Not bad, but sure is a wild windy day today.
Yeah, good thing you got a tarp on there, huh? It pays off. Okay. Pretty good looking derm you got here, Joe.
Now, it all begins with the farmer when he comes in and dumps his grain in the pit, down under the elevator. The furthest farmer comes from about 12, maybe 15 miles, and it's all big trucks, 300 bushels or more. And a fella brings in 3, maybe 4 loads a day. And John, he doesn't just stand there, it's harvest and a lot to be done. He's responsible to about 100 farmers or more. There's checks to be issued, permit books, quotas to be noted, and in the end, he's got to keep track of how much grain he takes in.
A little something for the birds or the chickens. Right. Okay, we'll see you later.
Okay.
anyway, John, and he's featured in Grain Going Out. John has a one-man band running the elevator in Saskatchewan there. As I said, he's a one-man band. He alone moves this boxcar with a pinch bar.
Bloody Gerber, stuck again. Gerber wouldn't sit on there, I'm gonna have to go again. The Gerber spout is controlled from the bottom down here. It's connected to it. We have a dial here and it's numbered according to our bin numbers. And to make sure that it's sitting on the right saucer down there, we have to go up and have a look. Because sometimes she doesn't work all the time and it gets out of place a little bit, and you probably think you have the number 9 bin and you're probably on number 8. And you could run into a problem there.
Now, when John's loading boxcar, he stands mainly behind that hopper there. Grain comes from the bins, and he'll draw, I think it's 22 hoppers to a boxcar. He checks the grain and then he weighs it.
A little too much, we'll have to add another 10 bushels on here. Okay, see what we got here.
John records the contents and the weights on the waybill for the railroad.
580. Guess we got another 5 more to go.
The leg elevates it back up to the top. The Gerber shoots it into the waiting boxcar.
So now in Wisconsin, where the grain elevators are basically gone, the roads got better, but also if you drive around Wisconsin, you'll see these huge cylindrical galvanized steel storage areas, which I think they use for drying corn, and corn is such a big deal now in Wisconsin due to ethanol, so that's what happened. Okay, look, and this is a picture of our granary up in the upper level on the distributor floor. You can see the chutes, obviously, and then these are different, the bins, and again,
So the distribution head's all complete? That whole thing's still there, right?
yeah, well, they, as I recall, have been told, the bins are, some of that stuff was taken out and fixed up and it'll be back in again. And then this next one here is, maybe you'll know this one, and I didn't. Door County's Granary fanning mill, along with other intact equipment, is currently in storage. Does everybody know what a fanning mill is?
Close the chaff off.
You got it. You absolutely, winnowing grain from the chaff and the straw. And if you're a Wisconsinite, there's a plaque on Bascom Hall in Madison that says sifting and winnowing ideas. Well, true, it was a big deal, it's still a big deal. But anyway, well done, Jeff, that's what a fanning mill is. Here's another view of the 1920s West Waterfront. And again, this was known as Sawyer, Wisconsin, and it shows the elevator. This also surprised me that on the west side, it included dairy, granaries, numerous warehouses, cherry processing plant, brewery, many other agriculture related. Today, only the Door County Granary remains. Okay, people stepping up. In 2015, a group of citizens were very interested in saving the history of it and saving it. And in 2018, the Sturgeon Bay Historical Society Foundation purchased it, and to save it from being destroyed, ground floor was removed and the building was temporarily moved off site. You probably all know about that. And then in 2017, 2018, and then 2021. Anyway, it got historic registry status in Wisconsin in 2017, and National Historic Registry in 18, and National Trust for Historic Preservation in 2021, which is really fantastic. Now, in 2019, the renovated granary was included in the new Sturgeon Bay West Waterfront Development Plan approved by the City Council, and the building was returned to the site. Now that's the Maritime Museum, this is the granary, and I'm just thrilled at the thought of tugs still being there along the waterfront, because there was a time when they were going to be moved, even though they're still working tugs. And if all you gotta do is go to the shipyard in the wintertime, and there'll be anywhere from 12 to 14 ships, boats in for inspections, repair, or maybe even an engine replacement. Anyway, it's pretty neat to be part of this approved plan. And I mentioned earlier James Dahlman, his firm, Dahlman, he and his wife, and they have a staff, and they're based in Boston, and they have an office in Milwaukee, and James Dahlman, who narrated before and will on the next slide, James is an architect critic for Harvard University. And also involved, shows up there, is, besides James and his staff, is a local Sturgeon Bay native, Jeff Bean, of Bean Engineering, and he's donated his expertise. And we have Green Fire Management acting as a general contractor.
With strong community and philanthropic backing, the project team has established a new vision for the Door County Granary. It will rise from the original Teweles and Brandeis structure and transformed into a civic destination for education and events. The exterior will be reclad, and new openings will welcome the community into the cathedral-like ground floor space, available for gatherings and supported by a new addition and accessible entries. A carefully choreographed interior walkway will lead visitors on a journey back in time through the bins, culminating in a luminous area with panoramic views of the harbor, Sturgeon Bay, and Door County beyond.
So in 2021, the granary design that James and his staff put together won one of 6 Progressive Architecture Awards from over 125 that were submitted. And it was featured on the cover of Architect magazine in March of 2021. And then in January of this year, was awarded Boston Society of Architecture Award. So you can see here on the board, I don't have to read it to you, but it's designed to be a 3-season facility, open to the public, and different events that can take place there. And there will be an addition put to it with a nod, if you will, to a railway car that'll hold a catering kitchen and also bathrooms. Phase 1, which we're in right now, you can read that just like I can, and the timbers will be coming to hold up the first floor that are 30 feet in length will be coming back after being restored, and then they'll be added on, as I say, this little structure for bathrooms and a catering kitchen. Phase 2, mezzanine level, you can read that too. Elevator, cleaning up, completing the head house, installing elevators. Pardon me. It'll have its own fundraising campaign, and the goal is to have first phase, of course, done, second phase completed in time for the granary's 125th birthday in 2026. Everybody has to have a groundbreaking, and so did we.
A lot of people say giving to charities is a responsibility, but really it's a privilege. And it benefits the person that's giving as much or more than it does the organization that's receiving.
I want to thank people because this is going to make Sturgeon Bay a better place. We have donors who are investing. You heard from one of them. We have volunteers who make things run and happen. We have organizations like the Sturgeon Bay Historical Society Foundation who have the drive to take on big projects. Thank you to all of you.
1, 2, 3.
Anyway, a fun day. How can you help? Obviously, you can donate money. And this is being run through FundWise through the Door County Community Foundation. There's a separate fund for the granary, and if one was to make a donation, you'd send it to the Door Community Foundation and note it for the granary. And if you know of anybody else or groups that might like a presentation, we'd be happy to do that at any time. I've got one scheduled up at the Ephraim Historical Foundation in July. Okay, a couple of thoughts here, which you can read as well or better than I can. Kind of hitching on to Jim Janning there. I mean, let's face it, my grandchildren would really have no clue where food comes from other than Pick and Save, Main Street Market, Piggly Wiggly or Woodman's. And you really want people to understand where it comes from. It comes from the farm. So this is the team that was assembled by the Sturgeon Bay Historical Society Foundation, obviously with great cooperation from the City of Sturgeon Bay, the Architect Community Foundation, Bean Engineering, Stillman Greenfire. Anybody have any questions? Thank you.